This happened just a few weeks ago. I had just moved into a new neighborhood, excited for a fresh start. It seemed perfect for my writing. The houses were old but charming. Each day felt still, peaceful. I thought it would help me find my creativity again after my breakup. On my third night, I heard scratching sounds from the attic. It was a strange noise, deeper than the creaks of an old house. I convinced myself it was just squirrels, or maybe a raccoon. I wanted to focus on my writing, so I brushed it off. As the days went by, I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Fields. She often stood in her yard, staring at my house. It felt odd. Each time I caught her gaze, I had a chill run down my spine. I waved, hoping to connect. She didn't wave back, just kept watching. One night, while I worked late, I spotted shadows darting past my window. It was dark outside. I swear there were kids playing, but when I went to look, there was nothing, just emptiness and silence. I figured it was my imagination. Stress can mess with your mind, right? Then Mrs. Fields knocked on my door. My heart raced as I opened it. She stood there, eyes wide and pupils big. "Are you okay, dear?" she asked, her voice sweet but off. I nodded, unsure what to say. The moment felt heavy and suffocating. She lingered, watching me. "Yes, I'm fine. Thanks for checking," I said, forcing a smile. She just nodded and left. That night, the scratching came back. It seemed louder, echoing through the walls. I thought it must be a raccoon or a bird. I felt cold all over. My mind was surely playing tricks on me. But things got worse. I started hearing whispers through the walls. I strained to catch the words, but they felt urgent and frantic. I pressed my ear against the wall, hoping to hear more. That's when I saw movement in my peripheral vision, something darting fast. I was sure I wasn't asleep. I was wide awake. The whispers kept swirling around me, and they felt real. It was too much. I needed to know what was happening, but fear paralyzed me. And then I heard the whisper right in my ear. "Why are you watching?" I jumped and spun around. Of course, nobody was there. I decided I had to confront Mrs. Fields. The next day, I knocked on her door. My palms were sweaty. When she opened the door, I blurted, "Did you see kids outside last night?" She looked at me with a strange smile. "They always come out at night, dear." A chill ran down my spine. I felt trapped in a nightmare. I didn't want to believe her, but I could hear the scratching again, louder this time. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The shadows in the corners of my eyes seemed to dance in delight, and I felt something dark watch me from above. I was alone, and yet I was never alone. Not in this house. I tried to shake off the dread from my encounter with Mrs. Fields. Ignoring her warning was my only choice if I wanted to regain some sense of normalcy. But every noise in the house felt amplified, echoing in the quiet corners of my mind. I couldn't concentrate on my writing anymore. That afternoon, I decided to visit the local library. I hoped a few hours lost in my book would help clear the fog. As I entered, I was greeted by the musty scent of old pages. The librarian, a middle-aged woman with wire-rimmed glasses, waved me over. "Looking for anything specific?" she asked, her smile soft but curious. "Just browsing," I replied, trying to sound casual. I wandered through the aisles, searching for inspiration. As I flipped through a novel, I noticed a familiar face through the window. It was Mrs. Fields, standing at the edge of the parking lot, staring directly at me. My heart skipped. I glanced away quickly, pretending to be engrossed in the book. When I finally left, she was gone. A sense of relief washed over me, but it didn't last long. The moment I stepped outside, the sunlight felt off, flickering unnaturally like a faulty bulb. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. That evening, as I sat at my desk trying to write, I heard scratches coming from the attic again. They had become a constant companion, taunting me. I tried to drown them out with music, but they only grew louder. Frustrated, I stood up and headed to the attic door. My heart raced as I reached for the handle. Would it be just another animal, or something worse? I hesitated. The scratching escalated, sounding frantic. I felt drawn to it, yet terrified. Finally, I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a dark staircase leading into shadow. I grabbed my phone, using the flashlight to illuminate the path. Every step felt like I was entering another world. The attic smelled musty, and the air was heavy. As my light scanned the room, I noticed the old furniture, dusty and forgotten. That's when I saw it. A small, ragged doll in the corner, its button eyes glimmering in the beam. I slowly approached it, unease creeping in. When I reached down to pick it up, I noticed something unsettling. The doll was worn, but had fresh scratches on its surface. I dropped it immediately, repulsed. Suddenly, I heard whispers again, swirling around me like a gust of wind. "It's not safe. They don't want you here." The message sent shivers down my spine. I stumbled backward, nearly falling over an old trunk. My heart pounded in my chest. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged as I pulled at the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Then a voice broke through the whispers, clear and chilling. "You should have stayed away." I felt a cold breath on my neck, and fear rushed through me like ice water. I was trapped, and it was only getting worse. I pressed myself against the door, praying it would somehow open. The cold air felt thicker, pressing against my skin like a warning. "Let me out!" I shouted, my voice cracking in the stillness. The whispers intensified, rising to a frantic pitch. They swirled around me like a storm, brushing against my ears, just out of clear comprehension. A dim light flickered in the far corner of the attic, causing my heart to race even faster. I turned my flashlight towards it, revealing the silhouette of a figure standing in the shadows. My breath hitched as I squinted, trying to make sense of what I saw. It was a woman, her features obscured, but I could make out the outline of a long dress that flowed around her like mist. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice a whisper now. The figure didn't respond, just stepped forward into the light. My heart sank. It was Mrs. Fields. "What do you want?" I backed away, pressing my back against the door. Her presence filled the attic with a chill, making my skin crawl. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, her tone almost gentle. "This place is not what it seems." "Then why are you here?" I snapped, irritation mixing with fear. "You chased me out just to show up now?" She took another step towards me, her eyes dark pools of sorrow. "Because you've awakened them. They were asleep for so long, but now—" She hesitated, glancing toward the darkness behind her. "Now they're hungry." I didn't know what she meant, but the scratching from the walls started again, an almost rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat. It rattled me to my core. I glanced around, panicking. "What do I do?" I yelled, desperate for answers. Mrs. Fields raised a hand, her fingers trembling. "You must leave. But first, you need to understand." She gestured toward the doll I had dropped earlier. "It's theirs, and they don't like when anyone touches what belongs to them." "What? Who are they?" I demanded, the shadows shifting around me. I was no longer just scared. I was angry. They had taken my peace, my sanity, and now they wanted to threaten me? "The children," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "They lost their way long ago, and they want you to join them." Just then, the door slammed open, as if summoned by her words. The gust of wind sucked the warmth out of the attic, and I stumbled forward, terrified. I wanted to escape before whatever it was that wanted me joined this grim reunion. I ran past her, down the staircase, barely glancing back until I reached the living room. Slamming the door behind me, I leaned against it, panting heavily. I could still feel the weight of those dark eyes watching me. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. My mind raced. What did Mrs. Fields know? What children's presence lurked in my home? As I wrestled with my thoughts, my phone buzzed beside me. I looked down and froze. A new message flashed on the screen. "You shouldn't have ignored us." I felt my blood run cold. What had I gotten myself into? The next day, I decided to confront my neighbor about the strange happenings. I felt like I had no other choice. Maybe she'd seen something or knew a bit more about Mrs. Fields. I walked over to her house, nervously glancing at the doll in my bag. I had wrapped it in a cloth, trying to forget it even existed. It felt wrong to keep it, like carrying a curse. When I knocked on her door, my heart raced. Would she even talk to me after last night? She opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Hey, how are you?" she asked, trying to keep it casual, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "I need to ask you something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "About the house and Mrs. Fields." Her face fell, and she stepped aside to let me in. "Come in, we should talk." As soon as I was inside, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The air was thick, and I sensed an unease hanging over us. I took a deep breath. "You know something, don't you?" She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "There are things in this neighborhood, things people don't talk about. Mrs. Fields was well connected to them, the children." "How do you know?" I pressed, my curiosity outweighing my fear. "I've heard stories," she said, her voice trembling. "If you're not careful, they'll notice you. They'll want you." A shiver ran down my spine. I thought briefly of the message on my phone. "I'm already noticed." I pulled the cloth from my bag, revealing the doll. It felt like it had a weight of its own, pulling me down with it. What do I do with this? Her eyes widened in horror. "You shouldn't have done that. You must return it." "Return it where?" I snapped, panic rising again. She stepped back, her voice quaking. "Back to the attic. But you can't just leave it there. You must say the right words, or they'll be unleashed." Just then, I heard a soft sound behind us. Something scuttled through the hallway. I froze, looking towards the source of the noise as the lights began to flicker overhead. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart pounding. She nodded, fear etched on her face. "They're coming." I backed away slowly, the dread pooling in my stomach. "What do you mean, they're coming?" Before she could answer, the front door slammed shut, as if caught in a gust of wind. The sound echoed, filling the silent space with urgency. We were trapped, the vibe shifting dangerously. Then I saw it, a shadow, long and dark, creeping in from the corner of the room. I did what any sane person would do. I bolted, darting through the hallway. In my panic, I ran right into the living room, but the front door was blocked now. The shadow expanded, and I turned around, catching sight of my neighbor's terrified expression. "Help!" I shouted, but the dread choked my voice. The shadow stretched towards me, dark fingers reaching out. That's when I saw it, a flickering light behind the shadow, something glowing. I remembered what Mrs. Fields said, the children, lost long ago. They didn't just want me, they needed me for something. As the shadow engulfed me, I made my decision. I had to find out what it wanted before it was too late. The air turned frigid as the shadow inched closer, wrapping around me like a vice. Panic surged through my veins. I couldn't let it take me without a fight. I forced myself to think clearly. What did Mrs. Fields mean by the children lost long ago? Just then, my neighbor screamed, breaking my concentration. "Run! Get to the attic!" Her voice shook me from my paralysis. Without waiting to process her words, I sprinted towards the staircase, dodging the shadow's grasp. Each step felt like a small victory, but I could hear the whispering growing louder, clawing at my resolve. I burst into the attic, slamming the door behind me. The room was dark, just how I remembered it from last night. Dust hung in the air, shimmering in the weak light coming from a small window. I felt my way around, shaking with urgency. The doll was still in my bag, but now it felt heavier, like it was pulling me towards something in the darkness. I turned on the attic light, illuminating the worn wooden floorboards and cobwebs. There, in the corner, stood the old trunk Mrs. Fields had shown me. It looked ordinary, but something told me it held secrets. I hesitated, recalling my neighbor's warning. You must say the right words. What were they? I had no clue. As I moved closer, I sensed a presence shifting in the shadows behind me. "Come on, think," I muttered to myself. I cracked open the trunk, feeling a rush of stale air escape. Inside, I found children's toys, all worn and broken, and scattered along the bottom were faded photographs of laughing children. My heart sank. They looked eerily familiar, like the faces in my dreams. Suddenly, the attic door rattled violently. I froze, holding my breath. The shadow outside thrashed against the wood, trying to break through. Fear surged again. I needed to act quickly. I rifled through the trunk, hoping to find something that would help me. Then I saw it, a small, weathered book at the bottom. I pulled it out, opening it to reveal faded pages filled with strange symbols. My pulse quickened. This must be it. A noise made me jump. Someone was at the door again, calling my name. "Help, please!" It was my neighbor, her voice cracking. "Stay back!" I yelled, feeling cornered. But the moment I spoke, the shadow ceased its assault. I looked at the book. The symbols glowed faintly, their light casting weak beams into the gloom. The urgency hit me. It was now or never. I had to say the words from this book, but there were so many symbols. Which ones were the right ones? The door rattled again, and panic clawed at my throat. I pointed at the trunk and shouted, "You want this? Then let me in!" The shadow hesitated slightly, as if considering my proposition. Just as I gathered courage to speak the first words from the book, the rattling stopped. "Please, let her in," I begged, my voice trembling. Suddenly, I felt a rush of warmth flood the attic, and the air became thick with an electric charge. That's when I realized the shadows weren't just after me. They were also scared of what I was about to unleash. I could feel their desperation, but also their uncertainty. I had to press on. I opened my mouth and began to recite the first phrase I found. As the words left my lips, the light from the book shone brighter, and the shadow recoiled. But the door began to splinter under immense pressure. I had to finish before it was too late. The words flowed from my mouth, shaky but strong. Each syllable felt like a small weapon against the darkness. The light brightened, pushing back the gloom. I felt a jolt of hope. Maybe I could banish this thing once and for all. But the moment I made it halfway through the phrase, a loud bang echoed in the attic, causing the door to buckle. My heart raced as splinters flew inward. I finished the incantation just in time. A brilliant light exploded from the book, engulfing the space in warm, golden energy. The shadow screeched like a wounded animal. It swirled around the room, desperate to escape the light. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance, but I held my ground, keeping my gaze focused on the chaos. Words bubbled in my throat, begging to be spoken again. Then it happened. I saw them. Figures materialized in the corners of the room, their faces ghostly and sad. Children. Their eyes looked at me with a mixture of hope and despair. I recognized two of them, faces from the photographs in the trunk. They seemed to want to push past the shadow, to escape into the light. "Help us!" one of them cried, their voice breaking through the whirlwind. "We're trapped!" "Trapped?" I gasped. I felt a swell of compassion and fear. I had to act now. I grabbed the book tighter, recalling the warning from Mrs. Fields. "Let them go!" I shouted, aiming my words at the shadow, even as it recoiled from the light. The room felt charged, and I could hear whispers weaving in and out of clarity. They were pleading calls for freedom. The shadow lurched at me, but I pushed forward. "I will set them free," I yelled, using all my conviction. I flipped through the pages of the book, searching for anything that could help them. My eyes narrowed on a symbol I hadn't seen before, glowing fiercely. The door behind me splintered more, threatening to give way. I pointed at the glowing symbol and recited the words, focusing all my intent on the children. "You are free. Come into the light." The energy intensified. The shadow whirled in a furious frenzy as the children reached toward me. Their ethereal hands touched the edges of the light. I felt their pain, their longing for release. Caught between two worlds, they were lost yet yearning, and every moment felt like an eternity. The attic trembled as I called again, "I release you." The words resonated with power, and the shadow let out another shriek, swirling violently like a storm. Then, suddenly, everything went dark. The light flickered and extinguished, the book falling from my hands. I gasped, the world spinning around me. I stumbled backward, only to feel a cool breeze rush past my face. The shadows were coming back, and this time they were angrier than before. Deep down, I knew I hadn't finished what I started. I could feel the children still lingering, but now their cries were lost in the winds of the darkness encroaching upon me. Just then I heard a sound, a heavy thumping echoing from inside the house. Someone was trying to get in. "Is that you, Sarah?" the voice shouted. It was my neighbor, but I wasn't sure how much time I had left. "What have I done?" I whispered, panic flooding through me. I needed to figure out how to set things right, but fear wrapped around me again. The shadows hovered closer, and I realized I was not alone. The doll in my bag began to hum softly again. Then a thought struck me. The doll! Could it have been a key all along? I reached for my bag, not knowing if I'd find hope or destruction when I opened it. My hands trembled as I unzipped the bag, anxiety swirling inside me. The humming from the doll grew louder, vibrating against my fingers. I pulled it out slowly, staring at its porcelain face. It looked innocent, but I felt something deeper, an ancient power waiting to be unleashed. "Please work," I whispered. The banging from the door was relentless, closer now. I could hear my neighbor's voice, but it was drowned out by the shadowy chaos. I took a deep breath and held the doll tightly. "Is this what you want?" I asked, unsure if I was talking to the children or the shadow. The doll's eyes glimmered, and I could almost hear a soft reply. It was as if it urged me to act, to believe in something bigger than myself. I focused on the children's faces imprinted in my mind. They were searching for a way out, desperately yearning for freedom. "Okay," I decided, "you're my guide." I closed my eyes and concentrated. "If you're real, show me what to do." The humming resonated through me, and I felt a shift in the air. I opened my eyes and saw the glowing symbol from the book hovering around the doll. It pulsed, synchronized with my heartbeat. Suddenly, the door shattered, splinters flying everywhere. "Sarah!" my neighbor yelled, her face panic-stricken. I had just enough time to throw up a hand and call, "Stay back!" I didn't want her to get caught in this darkness. With a burst of adrenaline, I positioned the doll between myself and the encroaching shadows. "I know you're there," I shouted, feeling the rush of newfound courage. "You can't take them anymore." The shadows hesitated, swirling uncertainly. The doll's humming morphed into a melody, an ancient lullaby that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I felt the energy building, a shield forming around me. I began to sing along, feeling the room shift. The shadows writhe, their anger palpable. "Help us, Sarah," the children's voices echoed again, clearer this time. "We're trapped." I cried out, my voice rising above the storm. "I'm trying. Just hold on." I remembered the incantation from the book, but it was fading from memory, buried beneath the cacophony of despair. Yet the doll pulsed again, and I felt the words rushing back. "Bind the shadows with light, free their spirits," I sang, channeling all my energy into the doll. The air crackled, the shadows recoiled. But then something shifted. The doll started vibrating violently, and the melody became discordant. I nearly dropped it as the shadows surged forward in a final desperate attack. "No!" I yelled, instinctively raising the doll higher. That's when I saw it. In the flicker of light, I caught a glimpse of something moving behind the shadows. A figure rushed in, completely unexpected. "Get away from her!" It was a boy about my age, with a face that sparked recognition, but raised so many questions. "Who are you?" I stammered, my heart racing even faster. The shadows hesitated again, creating a brief moment of stillness where the air felt heavy with tension. But the boy's eyes locked onto mine, filled with urgency. "We don't have time for questions," he shouted, moving closer. "Help me banish them, now!" I barely processed his words before the shadows charged again, an indignant roar of darkness seeking to engulf me. I clenched the doll, still humming, feeling its warmth spread through my fingers. "What do I do?" I shouted back, desperate and confused. "Use the lullaby," he yelled, his voice cutting through the din. "It's not just a song, it's part of the spell." I nodded, but doubt crept in. "I can't remember all the words." "Just believe in it," he urged. "Focus on the light." The shadows lunged, a wave of black mist swirling around us. I felt panic rising again, suffocating me. But then the doll pulsed harder, responding to my fear. The lullaby surged in me, rushing back like a tidal wave. I began to sing once more, my voice trembling but gaining strength. The boy joined in, his voice a powerful addition to mine. Together, we turned the melody into something solid, a bridge of light between us and the dark. I felt the room tremble, the shadows recoiling slightly. "Keep going," he urged, and it was like he breathed fire into my spirit. I pushed through the fear, pouring everything I had into the song. The shadows screeched, twisting violently, stuck in a jagged little dance away from the light we created. "Now," the boy shouted, pointing towards the swirling mass. "Focus all your energy." I concentrated intensely. "Bind the shadows with light," I called out, louder now, feeling the power shift. "Free their spirits." A blinding glow erupted from the doll, radiating in all directions. The shadows twisted, howling in fury as the light crashed against them. It was like a fight between daylight and midnight, the edges of the room filling with warmth while the cold clutched at my heart. Suddenly, everything went still. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything. No shadows, no whispers, and no songs. Just silence. I felt the boy beside me gasp. "We did it!" I was still singing, but my voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in. But then I saw them. The children appeared like fading embers, flickering in and out of visibility. They reached for me, eyes filled with hope and longing. "Thank you! Thank you!" the voices chimed, drifting like soft music over the chaos. But the boy was looking past them, face contorted in fear. "No, no! Focus!" he shouted again. "It's not over!" The shadows were reforming, bigger and darker than before. I could feel their resentment, their rage. They wanted revenge, and they wouldn't give up without a fight. I gripped the doll tighter, my hands slick with sweat, heart hammering against my ribs. Then I remembered something else from the book, something about a price for freedom. "What do we have to do?" I gasped, looking at the boy. He hesitated, eyes darting between me and the shadows. "We may have to let some of our light go. It's the only way to fully banish them." My heart sank. But what does that mean? Before he could answer, the shadows surged, pulling us back into the chaos. The air thickened around us as the shadows twisted into shapes, swirling and writhing like angry serpents. I took a deep breath, the lullaby still echoing in my mind, a faint light flickering in the corner of my thoughts. "What do you mean we have to let some light go?" I shouted, trying to drown out the growing darkness. "It's like a sacrifice," he yelled back, his voice strained. "We're connected to them. If we want to free the children, we must let go of some of our own light. It's the only way." I felt the cold slip through me, fear mixed with an unsettling resignation. But what if it's too much? What if we lose ourselves? "I don't know," he replied, panic lacing his tone. "But we have to try." With those words hanging in the air, the shadows lunged again. My heart seized in my chest. I felt something shift inside me, a flicker of determination battling against my fear. I could either cower or fight. "Okay," I said, more to myself than to him. "Together." "On 3, he shouted. 1, 2... Bracing myself, I squeezed the doll one more time. 3. As we sang again, louder and more fervently this time, I felt a warmth, a glowing energy diffusing from my heart. I envisioned the light spilling from me, merging with the melody, sending it out to the shadows. The darkness hesitated, as if caught in a web of light. With each note, I felt fragments of my essence flare up, drifting into the air around us. It was painful, yet oddly freeing. I could sense reserves of light ebb away from me, like sand slipping through fingers, but I couldn't think about that now. "Free their spirits! Bind the shadows with light!" we cried in unison. Our voices harmonized, each word pushing back against the darkness that tried to swallow us whole. The shadows twisted, screeching in protest. I could feel their fury and anguish rise. "Not like this!" They seemed to scream, but my heart raced. Each pulse of our song brightened the room, illuminating faces of lost children who reached out, shaking with the weight of past sorrows. Then, just as I thought we were gaining ground, a sudden cold gripped my shoulder like an icy hand. I gasped, my voice faltering. I turned my head, expecting to see something monstrous, but it was just a figure standing among the shadows, shrouded in darkness. "Who are you?" I shouted, dread curling around my gut. "It's not just shadows you are fighting," the figure replied, voice low and raspy. "You think you can wield the light without consequence? You'll lose more than you gain." Terror shot through me. "What do you mean? Who are you?" Before the figure could respond, the shadows surged once more, launching toward us like a tidal wave. "We have to focus," the boy urged, cutting through my panic. Everything seemed to pulse in rhythm with the song, the air trembling. "I won't let go," I shouted, unwilling to give in to the darkness. But then I caught sight of the flickering children. They were fading, losing their outlines as the shadows drank in more light from me. "Let go!" the boy cried. But just then, I noticed something moving behind the figure. Another shadow, creeping up quietly, ready to strike. What are they up to? I wondered, as everything began to blur, darkness mingling with the light in a chaotic dance. Then, everything went dark. I woke up on the attic floor, trying to shake off the sensation that had enveloped me. The air felt different now, heavy, yet eerily calm. As I slowly regained my senses, I became aware that the shadows had vanished, replaced by the dim glow of daylight streaming through the small attic window. The chaos had subsided, but an unbearable silence settled around me. Sitting up, my mind raced. Had it worked? Had I truly banished the darkness? Or was this silence just a prelude to something worse? I pulled the doll closer, oddly comforted by its presence. It no longer hummed, but felt warm in my hands. The sense of dread had lifted, replaced by an overwhelming uncertainty. Tentatively, I climbed to my feet and made my way to the door. There was no sign of the boy, the shadows, or the figure cloaked in darkness. I hesitated, checking behind me to see if anything lurked in the corners. Nothing. Just an empty attic filled with old memories and dust. Gathering the courage I thought I had lost, I opened the door cautiously. As I stepped out, everything felt normal. The house felt like my own again, no flickering lights or silence interrupted by frantic whispers. I made my way down the stairs, preparing to confront the world outside. When I reached the front door and stepped into the sunlight, the neighborhood looked unchanged. The streets were quiet, the houses standing like sentinels of an unbroken routine. But I noticed Mrs. Fields staring at me again from her yard. This time, however, her expression was different, one of concern mingled with a hint of melancholy. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked, her voice softer than any time before. I nodded, unsure of what to say. "I think so," I finally managed. Her gaze felt all-knowing, pinning me to the moment. "The children, they are at peace now, but something lingers. They don't forget easily." I faced her, confusion creeping in. "What do you mean?" "The energy you unleashed, it didn't just banish the shadows." She paused, looking past me as if seeing something I couldn't. "You opened a door. You must be careful. They're drawn to what they want." "What do they want?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I can't say," she replied, shaking her head, "but there's always a price." That hollow feeling resurfaced. The boy had vanished, the shadows were gone, but could I truly believe I was out of danger? The fear returned as doubts clouded my thoughts. "I need answers," I insisted, looking back at the house, wondering if I had truly escaped. "Sometimes answers come slowly," Mrs. Fields said, her eyes narrowing. "Sometimes it's better to live with questions." I felt the weight of her words settle on me as I jogged back into my house. I glanced behind me. She was still watching, her silhouette framed against the backdrop of fading light. Inside, I dropped the doll on my desk. It felt heavier now, almost like a tether to the mystery I had barely begun to unpack. The attic door creaked slightly, as if beckoning me back. The encounter weighed on my mind, leaving a knot of uncertainty in my stomach. I sat in silence for a long while, wrestling with the thoughts swirling darkly like a forgotten melody at the edge of my consciousness. I realized the truth. Even if the immediate danger had passed, questions still loomed over me, shadows lingering in the corners of my mind. I moved to a different city a week later. Packing up my writing, I tried to forget what I had encountered. The doll, Mrs. Fields, the shadows that had once sought me out. But the memory lingers. Did I truly escape? Or had I only been given a reprieve? And where was the boy who had appeared in the darkness? I'd never return to that neighborhood, but now and then I still hear whispers during the quiet moments alone. I wonder if the children found their way home. I wonder if they're still searching. And deep down, I know, some doors should stay closed. Some questions should remain unanswered, at least for now.